All right, welcome back. You're gone so long. All right, hello everyone. I'm Kelly Guentner. I'm going to be hosting the Fanfic panel just to give an update of where we are in the fundraising. We are at 42% of our goal at $850. Thank you so much to everyone who's donated so far. Everyone's been really generous. And our guests and team have been generous with their time. So thank you to everyone who's been generous with their time as well. And now I'm going to bring on my panelists. So first of all, I have someone who's been both a panelist and teammate. So hello, LW Salinas.
Hey, it's Lauren. Hi.
I thought it was okay to call you Lauren on screen, but
yeah, thank you for checking. Hello.
Hi. Yeah, I always like to respect people's, some people like to keep it private. So welcome. You look adorable. I love what you're wearing.
Thank you. It actually...
Yes. So cute.
It's so warm.
I love it so much. Oh, I love Dave. Hello, Dave Mattingly. Dave Mattingly says, Wonder Woman. There was a joke the first time I wore this on air that this is a 3D Wonder Woman shirt. And yes, it is. And
amazing.
I know. And next up is my dear friend Hollis Thompson. Welcome, Hollis. You're going to have to unmute yourself.
Hey.
As I said in the chat, you're looking very dapper. You look very handsome.
Oh, thank you.
Very, very much like how dressed up you are. I love it. Yes, Dave Mattingly, I'm pretty sure you are the one who made that 3D Wonder Woman joke, and it was hilarious, okay? And then the last contestant today is Mary Garner. Welcome, Mary.
Hello.
Mary!
Hey, Lauren. I don't know why my camera acts like it can see me on my end. There it is.
Yeah, you're...
Okay, there you go.
There you go. Now you're moving.
I'm going to blame the snow.
It happens. All right, so first things first, let's just go around and I'll have you all introduce yourselves and your connection to geekery and fan fiction. So I'm going to go clockwise, so that we'll start with Lauren.
So I have been technically writing fanfic since I was like 9 years old. My first self-insert X-Men character going on adventures. These days, I mostly come to it from the reading side. Yeah, the writing switch has not been flipped in a while, but we'll see. I'm trying to get back into it.
Maybe this panel will inspire you.
I hope so.
And what about you, Hollis?
I'm Hollis Thompson. I am a English faculty member at the University of Arkansas Hope and Texarkana. I am basically a story scholar. That's what I've kind of landed on. That's the through thread of all of my very eclectic interests and things I do scholarship on. I'm really interested in stories in all their different formats, how they work, what they do for people, how they form identity. And so fan fiction is, I think, a very interesting and important type of story. And I'm really interested to talk to you all about it.
Excellent. And Mary?
Yeah, much like Lauren, I've been writing fanfic since I was probably about 10 or so. I don't know exactly when it started, back with Star Wars and Hardy Boys and things like that. And then nowadays, I still do both. I do a lot of reading, but I also still write. Been working on a long fic that I'm trying to actually ascribe to the whole finish it before posting thing. We'll see how well that goes. I mostly stick usually to one or two fandoms at a time when I'm writing, but have been doing it for quite some time now. I try not to think about how long that's actually been.
It's always better. And of course, I'm Kelly Guentner. I've been writing fanfic since I was probably 15 or 16, back when my family first got the internet. That was back when my family was an early adopter of the internet. So if that tells you how old, you can guess my age. I said my age on the Jason Bear panel, so go back and watch.
Computer in the kitchen and the modem sound and
Yeah.
dial-up
Back
sounds,
when you had
yes.
computer rooms in your house.
Oh yeah. And so, yeah, and Lauren and I actually met through sort of a fanfic thing.
Yep. I brought up the journal role-playing in the B-list panel, since one of the characters that I played at the game where we met was my favorite B-list character.
Nice.
As soon as you picked that character in the chat beforehand, I was like, oh yeah, I remember.
Yep.
And I love Dave Mattingly's comment. 4 panelists enter, 1 panelist leaves. And then he says, I think my first fan fiction was Scooby-Doo when I was 8, which
Nice.
I love that.
Nice.
So
I love just knowing what people's first fanfic was, because I feel like that tells you a lot about, kind of, it's a snapshot of a time.
Yeah, it does. It's a lot of fun to kind of learn that. And also sometimes, you find people who actually recognize your original fandom and you're like, oh my gosh.
And that's actually my first question. So go ahead, Lauren. You brought it up.
Okay, so like I said, my very first sort of attempt at fan fiction was my self-insert character when I was in 4th grade. I remember actually writing this while just out of my mind with fever with chickenpox, about a character who had shape-shifting powers and could shape-shift into animals. And then that went on to me, again, unknowingly writing Star Wars fanfic with my best friend since I was 3 years old. And we were writing, it was like anti-self-insert, it was us. But instead of like, oh, everyone loves them, no, they hated us and they were constantly trying to get rid of us. But yeah, then Dragonlance, Backstreet Boys, again, Star Wars, X-Men. I'm very glad that the computer that I wrote most of my stuff on at the time was not connected to the internet and has since is probably long destroyed. It was what was it? It's this one Apple model. It was forever ago.
Yeah, the old apples that were like this thick.
Yes.
Front to back. That's front to back. That's not the
Actually,
monitor.
it might have been Macintosh by then.
Oh yeah, I think they were still Macintoshes, but they weren't
Oh, yeah,
the
back
cool
then.
Macs.
Oh god, no. We didn't have cool Macs until
Much later.
like,
Way later.
college, really.
What about you, Hollis? What was your first fanfic?
Wow. Probably when I was like 5 years old, I did all of these, like trying to do my own comics of Star Wars, Batman, Spider-Man. That was the earliest I can remember. That's part of what set me down the path I'm on. Was I've always loved stories since I was as young as I can remember. That's been the constant thread in my life. And a lot of the earliest stories I experienced were the fandom stuff, the Batman, Spider-Man, Star Wars, all of that. The earliest one that I can like still remember what it was when I was like 17 years old. I tried to write a Spider-Man novel and it was never finished, but I got like, I think close to 100 pages into it. And that was an important part of my journey as a writer. So there was that.
That's impressive. What about you, Mary?
Oh yeah. Oh geez. Actual first one I honestly can't remember. It was probably either Star Wars or Nancy Drew or Hardy Boys, something along those lines. I do distinctly remember writing a story of each of those for school at various points in time. And then first ones I actually started publishing on the internet was the old Adventures of Sinbad show back in what was that, like the early 90s or whatever. I still love that show. It's horrible, but I love it. And I do actually still have most of those old fics. They were on floppy disks, and they have since migrated amongst computers. I'm pretty sure they're on my current hard drive, but I try not to look at them.
Oh God, I found the computer that I wrote my high school fanfic on. It was a Macintosh LC2 that I got for free because our computer lab at school was upgrading.
Nice.
Oh my gosh, I love
Yep.
that.
And I read the most books, so
Well,
I feel like that goes hand in hand for sure
Yeah.
with writers. For me, it was. Now, I don't remember if I wrote things before this. I know I wrote things before this, but I don't remember if it was fanfic. But Buffy. Buffy was my first fandom. I put a lot of Buffy fanfic out there. I'm pretty sure some of it might still be out there. I don't
I know that.
I don't know. And then we have so Johnny, back of the cereal box, who are our hosts, shared my first fanfic was X-Men. I still revisit it from time to time. Johnny, I want to see that. I want to link to that. And Dave Mattingly says Lauren writing The Fugitive.
oh God, the crush I had on Harrison Ford as a kid. I might have.
I still have a crush on Harrison Ford, okay?
I mean,
is pretty awesome,
yeah.
to be fair.
Especially Harrison Ford back then. But you know what? He's aged well. And Willow Skylar of Skylar Productions says, I have yet to finish my Castle one that I have up on their website. So is that on like the Castle website? Interesting. And Dave Mattingly asked Kelly, did you also like the Buffy movie or just the series? Okay, look, I love the Buffy movie. It is one of my favorite B movies. They are two different animals. I adore the Buffy movie. It's amazing. Oh, and Willow Skylar says the X-Men fanfic comment was actually me. Willow, I need a link to this. And Corelli is going to write fanfic based on my Scorcher by Kelly Edwards. Oh, Corelli, I love you. Corelli's also my editor, so Corelli, as long as you're not writing stuff based on what I told you about it's happening in the third book, I'd be a little mad about that, but otherwise.
I feel like as a creator, you really know you've made it when someone writes fanfic about the thing that you have made or are in or whatever.
For real, like if someone wants to write fanfic of my book, y'all have my permission.
Which reminds me of so Interview with the Vampire came out. We have the Mayfair Witches starting to air. The Anne Rice fanfic purge. Do you remember? I was in the middle. I was in the middle of reading this, like, one of those script fic, like, kind of duck-amuck authors messing with the characters fanfics. I was in the middle of reading one of those. I came back after school the next day to open, to finish reading it, and it was gone. I was like, I know I didn't imagine this. And then a day later, I found out, no, Anne Rice said that she will sue.
Yeah, people wonder, or people kind of laugh now because there's still old fanfics that have that little disclaimer that I don't own the characters. Please don't.
All of my old ones that are like on fanfic.net, like all of them have those old disclaimers. I think
like that was going to protect us.
I don't own it, just playing in the world.
There's a debate about how much validity those have, and there certainly are. So I'm actually an intellectual property attorney by trade. So there are actually like there are IP scholars who debate about in a positive way about how much protection those give, and it is certainly something that kind of like works at least as a factor to say, hey, look, like I clearly wasn't trying to make money off of it because it says that right here, and that is one of the factors of fair use. So they're not totally worthless, but like AO3, because AO3 has, so many more protections and a legal team and all, it's not kind of as necessary somewhere like that. But they're not necessarily completely useless. It's just no one's ever really tried to find out if they're actually worthless or not.
Lauren, I feel like we're underqualified for this panel with Hollis.
No, there was a reason I was like, there's a reason that I was like, no, Mary needs to be in on this because
my rants about intellectual property and fanfic.
It's fascinating stuff, in my opinion.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but I hang out with a bunch of them apparently.
I mean, you could like throw a rock and hit my house, so you know.
Technically, yes. Yes.
Legal disclaimer, anything Mary says does not constitute legal advice.
Yes, no, I am not anybody here's attorney. This is not legal advice. Like,
Yeah.
So you actually have to pay me to be your attorney?
Which you should.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't do copyrights kind of like in my day-to-day, but I've done a bunch of research on it.
That is so fascinating. I really do appreciate you being here and sharing. It's an interesting perspective. And I like what Curly is saying. Curly Vanessa,
Exactly.
my editor again, says, it never hurts to be completely clear that your work draws on another artist's stuff, in my opinion. Agreed.
Yeah.
And that you're not trying to monetize it.
Exactly. I mean, it just helps make it clearer that, you know, you're not, I guess, trying to screw them over, if you will. So, you know, it certainly can't hurt to be like, hey, I'm just playing. I'm not making money off of this. Please don't sue me.
Because there was someone a few years ago that, I don't know if you guys remember this, but this guy wrote a James Potter prequel to the Harry Potter series. And he
Yes.
really did try to sell it.
I remember this.
Yeah.
I remember this.
I do too. I mean, there's been more than a few either purges or attempts by, you know, companies to be like, hey, don't do that. I mean, Lucasfilm actually tried to force everyone to like publish theirs on like the Star Wars website and like follow a bunch of rules. It didn't work, obviously, but they tried, and most of fandom was like, no, we're not going to do that because your rules are all like crazy strict and blah blah blah, and they ended up backing off. And that's happened a few times where Warner Brothers tried the same thing with Harry Potter, tried to force everybody to kind of like follow a whole bunch of rules, and everyone was like, no, we're not going to do it. And by the way, if you keep telling these poor kids, because they went after like a couple of like minors and tried to make them take their, you know, fanfic down and stuff, and it's like, you keep doing that, you're just going to give yourself a bad name. And so it's happened a few times, but most of the time the companies have backed off because it just ends up looking really bad for them. But then obviously then you have people like, you know, Anne Rice, who kind of followed through on it to some extent, and people did take it down. So
I feel really bad because one of the authors who has been like, please don't, I don't agree. I think his view has softened in recent years, where he would prefer that people not write fanfic, is George R.R. Martin, particularly about A Song of Ice and Fire. And one fic that it was a fic series that I was very happy with. It was an X-Men First Class and A Song of Ice and Fire crossover. I ended up just like writing it in a couple, like, just, you know, one of those days when you're writing and it's like you look up and several hours have passed and you've written like 6,000 words.
I love those days. I wish they happened more often.
Yeah, I feel that
right?
The last time it happened to me, it had to happen at midnight, so I stayed up all night at Mary's house. Actually, I was babysitting your dog, and I ended up writing a fanfic instead of going to sleep.
Well, I'm sure. Was it Athena and Sawyer?
It was Athena. It was Athena. I think you were taking JD to the vet.
I'm sure Athena was happy to keep you company. She's under my feet right now, actually keeping us all company.
Yes, she was a very good writing partner.
She is really good for that, mostly because all she does is sleep. She's old Australian Shepherd. As opposed to Sawyer, who tries to like help.
But he's a baby, so
he is.
He is a 100-pound baby.
Yeah. He's on the floor right there. I don't think, even if I didn't unblur, I don't think anyone could see anything but his feet.
So can each of you sum up for me why you think fan fiction is valuable? I know this is a loaded question, but we've talked about why authors talked about authors being against it. And obviously there's sometimes a stigma, but who wants to go first?
Okay. So from a technical standpoint, it's great especially if you're a kid doing this, if you're, you know, a teenager, you are kind of learning as you write. You are learning about characterization and trying to keep things in a set bound. It's like coloring inside the lines. You're training yourself to do that so it's believable, so it's legible. And also, kind of similarly around learning around that time, it's been incredibly important for people who are, discovering their identities to, write their queer characters, write their, AUs, write their, just whatever. There's a school of thought about writing that everything you write is a little piece of you, and you are learning how to direct all of that at that age.
Yeah, and actually, I'll go next then, kind of to expand on, or go off of what Lauren said. Yeah, there's a huge value to it, even from the reading perspective, right? Of kids, or even not kids, really kind of exploring and learning more about other orientations or genders or anything like that, and like in my case, just as a personal story, that is actually, like, fanfic is actually what helped me realize that I was, not straight. So it's like, it has a really big benefit, even if you're not writing, if you're just reading in a fandom, as well as, of course, the technical aspects of it can really help you work on your writing. But also, I think it just, it has value purely from, hobbies are important, and even if it's not meant to be I want to write original stuff in the end, and this is helping me learn to do it, just from the fulfillment it gives to write it and then have other people comment and read it, and, get to play with characters you really love or settings you love, and just play around and do fun things in a way that you really can't in so many other hobbies or aspects of life, right? Like my day-to-day is pretty heavily constrained by what you can and cannot do. And so, fanfic lets me just be like, and now I'm just going to write, I don't know, cross over these two random ass things because I can. Like, who's going to stop me? So there's I think a lot, huge benefit to it just from that perspective as well, whether it's reading or writing it.
So I see value in fan fiction in both a more individual sense, kind of what you guys are talking about. I can relate to that 100%. I would not be the writer I am today if I hadn't gone through the fan fiction phase. And I forgot to mention, I'm also a playwright. So I thought at the beginning I was going to be a novelist, but then I learned better and I found out who I was as a writer later on. And I realized that drama is where I'm supposed to be. But I wouldn't have gotten to that point if I hadn't gone through that fan fiction phase. And if I'm being completely honest, as a creative writer, I still, in a sense, everything I do is still fan fiction, because the plays that I write, one of them is about Brer Rabbit, pre-existing folktale character. Another one is involving fairy tale elements. And I'm also the artistic director for a nonprofit in my area called the Biblical Drama Institute. And I write a lot of plays adapting stories from the Bible. So all of the stories that I love that just happen to be public domain, I can therefore make plays off of.
Now you can go, write about like Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, and Winnie the Pooh.
Sherlock is a little bit.
Well, yeah, no, that one completely went.
The vast majority of Sherlock Holmes, not the very latest stuff, but the vast majority of Sherlock Holmes is public domain now.
Yeah, now Sherlock Holmes with emotions, they won't sue you over.
But I totally want to write a Winnie the Pooh play, by the way. That's totally something awesome. on my
Yeah, list. Come on, the stuff that is actually fanfic that people refuse to admit is fanfic. Like, there's a movie that's coming out again based off of the original A.A. Milne designs for Winnie the Pooh. It's a horror movie called Blood and Honey.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, and
it's fanfic.
Exactly, it's fanfic. Enola Holmes, fanfic.
Every tie-in novel written for Marvel, for Star Wars, for insert, thing here is technically fanfic. They're just getting paid for it.
Dante's Inferno was self-insert fanfiction.
Dante drives me crazy, by the way. Every time I teach World Literature 1 and I get to Dante, I'm like, okay, guys, I have to teach him because he's important, but...
Oh, come on, he gave us Sexy Satan.
Oh my god. But did we need Sexy Satan?
Sure,
I mean, did we... I was trying to come up with a...
Did we not need Sexy Satan?
Yeah, but then I was like, but then somebody can answer yes, and I'm like, I don't want that.
No, you don't. But that does bring me to the thing that I am actually very, on a more philosophical note about fanfic and society. Throughout all of human history, at pretty much every other point in the history of the world, stories are always building off of the work that other people have done. We wouldn't have people like Ovid, we wouldn't have people like Dante if they hadn't been able to expand on the characters that had become part of their cultural mythology. And what I think is really interesting about our time period from a scholarly standpoint is that for pretty much the first time in history, we have lost, in many cases, the role of the storyteller as individuals in society that understand the power of stories to form identity, to form ethics, belief, core values, because you do, all of us, our ethics, our identities come in large part from the stories we experience. But now, interesting point of history, it's no longer individuals who can take on that role of storyteller unhampered and do the work that they really think is important in telling stories that they think need to be told ethically with whatever characters they want to. Instead, in large part, our mass storytellers in our culture are these corporations that are driven by profit. And they can put individual storytellers in charge who may be very gifted people who see this as a calling, but they also might not. And sadly, I'm very concerned for our society about whether some of the real genius things that could be really done for these characters, that could be done really well in society, especially with superheroes and things like that, that have become so embedded in our cultural consciousness that now the only one who has the power to say what is canon, what can be put out there, are these corporations. And again, I don't hate copyright law. I am a creator myself. I appreciate the fact that copyright law exists. But when I see these types of things happening with corporations shutting people down, such like that, I'm very concerned for our society. And I'm piggybacking some of these points off of an activist named Benjamin Nolet, who pointed out the role of corporation as storyteller.
So bouncing off of that and kind of along with the whole identity question, the good thing about kind of where we're at today is that there's such a low barrier of entry for indie creators. Whether, fanfic being this kind of big equalizing zone right there, and you are having people who do not see themselves as having their, through the mainstream, place to give you entertainment, like the stuff that's not on TV, that's not being published. So people explore a lot of their identity through there. You have a lot of, I know so many trans people and non-binary people and, queer of various places along the Kinsey scale, ace people, being able to use these characters as not only a place to explore, like, okay, what would be the result of this, but to bring out things that they really connected with. These days, I read so much wrestling fanfic. It's like my brain one day decided to check out, hey, I wonder what this scene looks like. And now I have like 50 tabs open on my phone, specifically just of wrestling fanfic. But there's a lot of wrestlers and their archetypes that a lot of particularly trans mask people have projected their identities onto, because it's like, okay, here there's, whatever. Projecting their identities is the wrong group of words. It's more like, this is what I relate to in this person in a way that maybe was not intended. And, people grab onto characters for whatever reason, whether it's, there's something in this character's background or behavior or something that you relate to, and you just grab onto that, and being able to kind of explore that without this huge barrier of entry, and being able to link your friends, and then they can link their friends, and you meet up with more people who are similar. It's been incredibly heartening to see.
And I just want to read Tabby Toby's comment that fan fiction is a really good place to discover identity, since mainstream media doesn't explore it in a good and healthy way. And
I mean, I like to read a lot of like polyamorous fic, because why have a love triangle when you could simply close off and be a triad? But the presentation in the media is like Sister Wives on Discovery.
If you get any at all, yeah.
Or see if you get any at all, or, just all of that stuff. But a lot of poly people do a lot of writing about, like, okay, here's a lot of the dynamics and stuff, like communication and mutual respect and stuff like that.
And I like Willow of Willow Skylar Productions. She says, I know it's common to read bad fanfic at conventions, but I do find it more exciting when you can get voice actors to read a sonnet or a passage from a popular story. Sign me up, Lauren.
Okay, so please. I actually love doing this. There is, I don't know if I would call it fan fiction, but it is a particularly interesting bit of fan work in the artisanal dildo makers thread on Something Awful back in the day. Somebody actually came up with a valid.
Not where I expected you to go with that. I just want to say. I feel
look up Something Awful Puntl, Puntl, which is the vulgar term in Sindarin for an elf's dick. Oh. And there was this whole biological explanation of, okay, why has there never been a successful, like, male elf, human, female, all the examples we have, the two examples that we have are female elves with male humans. And then just extrapolating from there, and it resulted in a 3D model of it being sold. But it's one of my favorite things to read out loud. That, and I know Mary and I still bring up Legolas by Laura all the time and quote that constantly. Legolas heard sound!
Joining us right now. I'm sorry, Hollis. He's like, what?
Look, you want to talk bad fanfic. I have not stopped making Dobby Stretches Sir jokes since I heard about it. But it's, again, it becomes one of those weird little folklore bits down the years.
Well, kind of look at the My Immortal fic, right? And like how many times people rip on that.
I love it.
In any fan space,
I want to say there might be references to that in current bits of media that are being created by people from our generation who grew up with people, reading out My Immortal to torment their friends.
Oh my gosh. I hope that author is living his or her best life wherever they are.
There's been so much mystery. It's actually incredibly fascinating about trying to find out who wrote My Immortal. There's been just so much.
The fact that there's actually been people like falsely claiming to like be the author of this fic.
Yeah.
And it's a fanfic.
But it's at the same time,
it's that big of a cultural touchstone.
It's like claiming that you were DB Cooper. Like,
it was really Stephen King.
Yes.
Oh, I would love that so much.
So I like Dave Mattingly's comment, a good book will inspire a reader, a bad book will inspire a writer. And I just want to say that some fanfics, they kind of fill in the gaps. So if a story ends in a way that is unsettling, or if a TV show leaves a cliffhanger, or if your favorite writer or if your favorite character gets killed off, fanfic can make it better.
Mm-hmm.
So much.
I love all of that. There's been so much interesting stuff, both from people who are like, okay, I'm going to write, a fix-it fic where Thorin Oakenshield doesn't die in The Hobbit, and just there's like Hobbit fandom is fascinating. And there's also people who have legitimately kind of spun off from being furious at pieces of media. One of my favorite book series, the Boss series by Jenny Trout, writing as Abigail Barnett, I think. It was kind of an FU to all the bad BDSM stereotypes in 50 Shades of Grey. And it's always kind of beautiful to me when you're able to take this just negative feeling about they did this wrong or they could have done this and exploring something new with it.
I wish there were quick guidelines. It doesn't exist. I wish it did. The copyright standard is substantial similarity, which, depending on which court, which circuit you're in, mean a lot of things. And then there's several factors of fair use, one of which is of commerciality. But then there's, of course, the whole thing of, hey, fanfic, people actively try not to get money off of, but then, like, fan art, people sell all the time. And it's considered kind of totally okay. So, honestly, I really wish there were quick guidelines. It would be great. They do not exist. It's all exceedingly squishy, and it's never really made it to court on the fanfic side, or even, I think, on the fan art side, now that I'm thinking about it. So there's not really any precedence either, which makes it equally extra difficult, because there's nothing we can really point to that a court has done to say, hey, yeah, that's, here we have something resembling a standard.
Do you think that might change in the next, 10, 20 years?
It might. I mean, as more and more authors kind of have their start in fanfic, I actually almost see it going the opposite way, simply because we're going to have less and less authors who have issues with it. Right? A lot of big name authors nowadays started in fanfic, are all about fanfic, still write fanfic themselves under other names. Mm-hmm. And as a result, I almost feel like we're going to have less opportunity for those kinds of cases, which I think is probably, is not necessarily a bad thing, simply because we're just not going to have the authors that are out there trying to do the fic purges, because they're just like, yeah, whatever, write fanfic, it's cool. Like, just don't try and sell it and pretend you're me. But it could happen. If it does, I would hazard a guess that the OTW, the Organization for Transformative Works, if nobody knows who they are, will be actively involved, since they have a legal team, and that's who runs AO3.
We love AO3.
AO3 is
go ahead. Sorry, Hollis.
No, I'm sorry.
No,
we academics have a bad habit of talking over people and thinking we're the only ones who have something valuable to say. So if I do that to anyone, I'm sorry.
No.
Go. I would really love to see a case about this go through court. I was really hoping that the case, I can't remember the names now, but there was a Star Trek fan film that had raised a lot of money, and Paramount sued them, but they settled out of court. And I was really upset about that, because I would really like to see this go to court and have a definitive answer from the legal system about what these corporations do and do not have the right to when it comes to intellectual property. Because, like I said before, I am super concerned about the long-term effects to our society when characters that, again, are such a part of the culture being owned by certain corporations when their original creators have long since passed on. And that's something I would really like for a level-headed judge or jury to be able to give a definitive answer, I hope, in the right direction. Because, like we've been saying, or you guys have been saying, if you don't make money on it, in theory, that makes it okay. But
it is technically only one factor.
Exactly.
But it is a significant one. Depending on
And
the
again,
circuit,
I'm
but
not a
that is
lawyer.
commonly, that's commonly one of the big ones. But it is technically only one factor. That said, I don't know that we're going to get necessarily judicial activism. It's just that there needs to be a case of first impression, and there just hasn't been, because of things like this. Like the Star Trek case. I can't remember the name of the fan film either. I was trying to find it in my own notes, but they ended up just settling, and it didn't go anywhere, and so it's kind of like, well, now what? So I guess we'll see if we get anything.
I hope. I hope. Again, my main thing is that there are certain corporations. I'm not going to name them. There's one that anyone who knows me knows I particularly hate, who have been known to try to squash anything that they feel will hurt their brand in some way, whether they're making money off of it or not. And that's the kind of pettiness that I just can't stand.
Yeah, there's a
few
I
of
know.
Those. Nintendo went and did that a few years back.
Nintendo's one of the ones I was thinking of. Yeah, they get very, very cranky about anything they think hurts the image of, like, Pokemon. Which, on the one hand, you can kind of understand because it's targeted at kids, and then on the other hand, it's kind of like, yeah, but that's the parents' responsibility. I completely agree, actually, with the AI authored stories not being copyrighted. There's not an author there. Also, it's they're always based on other stuff, so that's a whole thing too. Technically, even fanfic though, like, has a copyright protection. It's just the copyright that the fanfic author would possess is primarily, of course, going to be in the things that they have added, their own story, their dialogue and stuff, but not in the underlying characters or setting and stuff. So, even fanfic authors do have at least some copyright protection. But again, it's never truly been explored, like, just how much, because historically, fanfic authors have often backed off. They didn't have, the support necessary to fight it because, like, the OTW and all didn't exist at the time. And then now in recent years, corporations have become a lot more wary about doing that and a lot more smart about incorporating fandom into things. And of course, again, so many authors nowadays are fanfic authors themselves, or at least are pro fanfic, so that they're not terribly inclined to go out there and pull, the Anne Rice thing and try and kill all fics about them.
I also, just for the sake of fun literature history, my man C.S. Lewis, way back in the 60s, gave unilateral fan fiction approval because he actively encouraged kids writing to him about if he would ever write another Narnia book to just write their own and keep going.
I love authors that do that.
C.S. Lewis was so neat in so many ways. Like, I'm a fan. So we're running low on time because William Catt showed up after, time zones are so tricky. So there's a little bit of a time zone snafu.
I can't tell you how many times I had to go in and correct this in my phone. We just moved, I've been here since June, to a new time zone. And this is the first time I've ever been out of my home time zone. So the mental math it's real. The confusion is real.
I'm telling you, next year, Greenwich Mean Time, screw everyone. Everyone will be confused. We'll all be confused together.
We'll all be confused together. Yeah, I was really, really glad that you gave me the time in Mountain Time, because I was like, oh no, if I have to convert this is going to be bad.
My brain gets confused so much whenever, Sorry, go ahead, Hollis.
No, I interrupted you. You go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, because my best friend lives in Eastern Standard Time, I'm Central, and even just trying to call her, and I'm like, what time is it? Are you an hour behind me, an hour ahead of me? I don't know. Which way is it?
Oh, man.
So, being an English professor, I'm typical in that I'm really bad with numbers. So I feel like now, for the first time ever, I'm surrounded by people who are living my same life for the first time. With
I used to know calculus. And now I can't remember +2 -2.
Right. I'm like, my undergrad's in engineering, but there's a reason I ended up going to law school, and it's because math and me do not always mix. Now I don't have to know math.
I work with numbers every day. I have no excuse. So I'm gonna go around the table, I was gonna say, and have you all give us your last thoughts. So last thoughts on fanfic.
Oh, there was this whole thing I wanted to say about people writing fanfic therapeutically or reading fanfic therapeutically, but people do that. I mean, discuss it, I guess. I'm always happy to discuss fan fiction, philosophy, theory, whatever you want to call it, off of this. So
we'll save that for part 2 next year.
Sounds good.
It is very therapeutic, though. Agreed. Okay, Hollis.
I would say never let somebody look down on you if you believe that you have a story that's worth telling, these exist out there, and you're writing fan fiction. A lot of scholars, I'm going to speak to my own group of people, scholars have not been kind to fan fiction in general. And I just want to tell you, Shakespeare almost never used an original plot. He took almost all of his plots from other people. If I'm not mistaken, some playwrights who were still alive at the time, that he took plots and he made it better. If you believe that you can do that, don't let anybody look down on you. 100 years from now, you might have the definitive X-Men story that later on scholars are like, yep, that was the best one. So don't ever let anyone look down on you if you believe
Lancelot wasn't an original character in the Arthurian myth. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, he got added in
Chrétien de Troyes made him up.
Yep.
And then they kept on writing more of it. And that was an important part of medieval literature.
Mm-hmm.
And what about you, Mary?
Yeah, I guess kind of the same thing. Yeah, fanfic is awesome. Everyone should write it. No, not necessarily everyone should write it. Just because it's not for everyone. I know a lot of people go, hate on like, oh, bad fanfic, etc. And I'm just kind of like, dude, I've reread the stuff that I wrote when I was 12. And it was terrible. But you don't get better unless you do it. So yeah, don't let anybody like bash you for writing bad fic or anything either. But write what you love. And I just wish in general fandom, would kind of take that a little more. It's like, write what you want to write. If you don't like it, don't read it.
Tag accordingly.
Yeah, tag accordingly, please. Like, definitely, yeah. AO3 is amazing. Tag accordingly, but write what you want to write. And yeah, fanfic is awesome, and should
and like things should not have to be monetized to be worth it.
Yes, yeah. Yes. Don't let anybody tell you that just because it's fanfic, it's not worthwhile, because it's totally worth something. Whether it's monetized or not.
It's all I've been able to read over the pandemic. It's like my brain just grabbing for comfort.
Yeah, because you don't have to like learn the characters. It's like, oh, I know these characters and I just want to watch them fall in love 50 different ways, damn it.
Or 50 different fics in the same way.
I mean, that works too, right?
Yeah, again, there is no one way to do a thing. Have fun exploring.
Exactly.
Great. And where can I find you all online if I want to stalk you online?
So everywhere that I'm at professionally is at my website, lwsalinas.com. That includes voiceover roles, podcasts, audiobooks. I do audiobooks. And on Twitter, I am Sithwitch at SITHWITCH. If you want to talk to me about fan fiction or witness me shitposting about wrestling.
Love that. And what about you, Hollis?
Oh, sadly, I'm not very much out in the interwebs. The best way you can get in contact with me is to enroll in a class at my university. I do teach the online comp too at University of Arkansas at Hope in Texarkana. But if you're interested in me as a playwright, like if for any reason you thought, oh, that sounds like an interesting play, I'd like to think about it for my local theater group or whatever, you can shoot me an email, Hollis, the letter C, Thompson @gmail.com, and I'd be happy to show you what I do.
Yes.
I am Lurks most places, LURKZ. That is the name I write under AO3 and on fanfic.net, although that stuff's all fairly old, so please don't judge me. And then on on Twitter specifically, it is at Lurks, LURKZ05, because tragically Lurks alone was taken. But yeah, I'm always happy to talk about fanfic and fandom stuff, and I haven't really been posting on Twitter lately, but a lot of what I do is, you know, Wheel of Time stuff and screaming about things like Babylon 5 and gay stuff and whatnot.
Nice. You can find my fanfic on Dreams of Never at AO3. I don't know if I should open that up, but you know what? It's out there now.
Oh, okay. If
Too late,
everyone's
Kelly,
sharing
it's too
theirs, then I am Sithwitch13 on AO3, probably also on fanfic.net, but I haven't been on there in like, I don't know, 20 years.
Pretty sure that's also your fanfic.net name, but I'd have to look at it.
Yeah, it's some
I know mine is
variation
lurks on
thereof.
both places.
I think mine's the same.
Like,
Yeah.
Okay,
and
I feel like I
otherwise-
need some fanfic cred. So I'm going to say I've got like 2/3 of a script about superheroes that if any theater producer or Comic-Con is brave enough to want to put it on, there's that. Otherwise, I don't. No.
I want to be in that.
If I could memorize lines, I'd want to be in that.
I want to do it. We could do it as an audio drama.
I
could.
was going to say.
We could,
All
and
right.
that actually might work best for this one. So it's awesome.
Talk to me if you're interested.
Okay.
Let's do this. All right, so I'm gonna roll the video and then bring in our special celebrity guest and our host. And thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. This has been so much fun.
Thank you. I'm glad
you
we
for-
got to have this.
yeah,
Me
thank you
too.
for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yes, thank
I
you.
was super honored. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our charity partner for this year's Multiverse FunRaiser is the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health. They exist to spread awareness of aortic health and prevent unnecessary suffering through genetic research, widespread education, and radical advocacy. Simply click on the link at our website, www.themultiversefunraiser.com, that says donate here, and that will take you to our Just Giving link. All donations go directly to the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health. As a bonus, every $10 donation that you give enters you into our sweepstakes to win fantastic prizes. All information can be found at our website under giveaway. So thank you for watching and thank you for supporting.